This is the biography of Mary Whiton Calkins, narrated and illustrated by me, Becca Williams. Mary Whiton Calkins was born on March 30th, 1863 in Hartford, Connecticut. She was one of 6 children of Wolcott Calkins and Charlotte Whiton Calkins. The Calkins were a close-knit family and that would have every influence on Mary's life experiences. At the age of 18, her family would migrate to Newton, Massachusetts, which would be her and her family's home for the rest of Mary's life. At this time in the 19th century, women's education had begun to advance. However, it would still be a difficult journey ahead for Mary. Her father recognized this early on and was determined to help her pursue her education. Mary enrolled at Smith College in 1882 and would graduate in 1884 with degrees in classics and philosophy. Soon after her graduation, Mary's family would move to Europe. Here she would grow her knowledge of the classics and study languages such as Greek. Upon returning home with her new European experiences and an offer from a friend of her father, Mary would become a professor of Greek at a women's liberal arts school, Wellesley College. After only teaching 3 years at Wellesley, Mary was approached by a professor who wanted to start a psychology program. Psychology was a subcategory of philosophy which Mary had a degree in, but the science was still in its youth. In order for her to teach psychology, she would need to study it for at least a year. The problem was there were only a handful of programs in colleges and universities in the States, yet Mary was up to the challenge. William James, a professor of psychology at Harvard University, invited her to sit in on his lectures to help her gain some knowledge she would need to teach at Wesley. However, Harvard forbid Mary from attending the university or even sitting in on James' lectures. Mary's father, who believed in her right to an education, would not take no for an answer. He, along with the president of Wellesley College, wrote to Harvard insisting on Mary's admission. Their efforts were a success. Harvard agreed to allow her to attend lectures with the only condition of her not being considered an actual student of the university. Mary would go on to study psychology and experimental psychology at Harvard. This would allow her to establish an experimental psychology laboratory at Wellesley College, which was one of the first in the country and the first at a women's university. Throughout her studies in psychology, Mary would accomplish many great feats. She developed a theory on self-psychology, which emphasized the role on conscious self in the context of psychology. Also, Mary wrote a dissertation and experimental research on the association of ideas, which she presented at Harvard. In her research, she created the paired associates technique, which paired numbers with colors to study its effects on memory. The board unanimously voted that the dissertation satisfied all their requirements, but the university refused to give her any recognition. Despite her downfall at Harvard, Mary would go on to become the first female president of the American Psychological Association and the 14th president overall to serve. Within her lifetime of psychology, she would write several books publishing her findings and become ranked 12th in the United States for most eminent psychologist in 1903. Mary Whiton Calkins died on February 26, 1930 in her hometown of Newton, Massachusetts. She was not only an incredible scientist who made many contributions to the building of psychology as a science, but a great woman in American history.